It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. Meeting with chief editors of Korea's major news outlets, President Park Geun-hye held a Q&A session and vowed to be a better listener and bridge the gap between her administration and the public. The Korean government announces a three-tier restructuring plan. It covers industries sensitive to current economic conditions and aims to restructure companies based on their estimated credit risks, in addition to focusing on companies or industries suffering from oversupply. There have been mixed reviews on North Korea's recent submarine launch ballistic missile test. One expert, however, points out the launch was not a failure and that the regime is making steady progress, listing proof that Pyongyang's shifted to solid fuel and its missile accelerated well past the speed of sound. President Park Geun-hye took a step closer towards hearing the people. She sat down with the chief editors of Seoul's major news outlets, vowing to better communicate with all parts of society. In addition to that, the meeting has built expectations that she will have regular meetings with political party leaders. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye met with the chief news editors of major media outlets over lunch on Tuesday in a bid to expand her communication with the public. In her opening remarks, Park outlined her three-year economic innovation plan that involves creating growth engines to sustain Korea into the next 30 years. She also pledged to listen more closely to the public and work for their needs.
남은 그 임기 기간 동안 이번 선거에 나타난 그 민의를 잘 반영해서 또 변화와 개혁을 이끌면서 또 각계각층과 협력과 소통을 잘 이루어 나갈 수 있도록 각고의 노력을 다 하겠습니다.
The president's meeting with the news outlets is their first in 3 years, possibly indicating a shift in her stance following her ruling party's defeat in the general election 2 weeks ago. After accepting the outcome as a reflection of the public's will, President Park suggested that the three main parties in parliament form a new negotiating body with the government. She added that she is willing to meet regularly with the party leaders after returning from her trip to Iran at the beginning of next month. Meanwhile, in remarks directed to Arirang TV's news director, the president stressed the importance of having news about Korea in the world, saying that Korea's economy and security is closely tied with the international community. Saying that she will do all she can to make the people's lives better, President Park called on the press to bridge the gap between her administration and the public and build momentum for the government's efforts to spur growth. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The Korean government is putting all efforts into reviving Korea's sluggish economy. The plan is to implement comprehensive restructuring for sectors that have lost steam. And at the top of the priority list are the shipbuilding, shipping, and steel industries. Kim Min-ji tells us more.
The Financial Services Commission is urging stakeholders to take a stronger approach to restructuring Korea's traditional core industries.
Business conditions are deteriorating structurally in industries such as shipbuilding and shipping, and the situation is not likely to clear up soon. Our task is to either root out low-performance companies or support them to ensure they remain competitive.
The financial regulator is looking at strict restructuring, especially for shipbuilders and shipping firms. Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering has been advised to reduce wages and jobs on top of the 700 positions it already cut and to sell off more of its non-core assets. Creditors of Hyundai Heavy Industries and Samsung Heavy Industries are expected to be asked to draw up self-rescue plans as well as monitor such efforts. The FSC has also called on the debt-ridden shipping sector to complete renegotiations with shipowners to reduce their charter rates by next month. If they fail to do so, creditors may have no choice but to put them under court receivership.
It remains to be seen whether efforts at the government level will work. These industries are in a state where restructuring is inevitable. Companies may initially push back, but if it helps strengthen their competitiveness, drive down costs and create synergy through mergers, it could produce good results.
The Financial Services Commission also announced a plan to limit the fallout from its restructuring scheme. It vowed to expand the assets of state-run banks and come up with measures to support workers who are laid off. The regulator says it will implement a 3-year plan that will start with the restructuring of industries most affected by current economic conditions, then cover companies or sectors suffering from oversupply and credit risks. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Restructuring these ailing sectors is expected to be a painful process. The stakes and costs are high, and the loss of jobs potentially massive. To help us better understand why it is being seen as a necessary move by the government, Kwon Jang-ho zooms in on the stark reality faced by Korea's key industries.
Slump, as well as the rise of competition from China, has led to plummeting sales, orders, and profits in Korea. Last December, the government named 5 industries that were in need of an overhaul: shipbuilding, shipping, construction, steelmaking, and petrochemicals. Shipbuilding has arguably been the hardest hit. Low oil prices and falling trade have led to orders drying up. Meanwhile, Chinese rivals are winning more orders, especially for smaller ships. Last year, the Korea's big 3 shipbuilders, Hyundai Heavy Industries, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, and Samsung Heavy Industries, posted a combined loss of $6.5 billion. It was also the first year all 3 players posted losses. The order backlog also dropped to the lowest in 12 years, and targets were lowered by 20%. The shipping industry is also in trouble. Korea's number 1 and 2, Hanjin Shipping and Hyundai Merchant Marine, have both had to seek debt settlement agreements with creditors after amassing a combined debt of $9 billion. Falling trade, especially exports to China, have been the biggest factor. Korea's imports and exports have posted negative growth every month since the beginning of 2015. A shake-up in the global shipping industry, with the world's biggest shippers forming new alliances, is causing further uncertainty. Operating margins for the steelmaking and petrochemical industries have been relatively healthy, but production for both continue to decrease as cheaper steel from China and low oil prices have decreased their demand. Construction is the only one that has seen growth in recent years. The government knows that time is of the essence to save these struggling industries. The country's economy relies on them. It's looking to push through with restructuring before political burdens start to mount ahead of next year's presidential election. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Korea's growth rate has remained in the 0% range for a second straight quarter. The slowing growth, prompted by sluggish demand at home and abroad, is deepening concerns of low growth becoming a long-term trend. Hwang Jie has the numbers and more.
Growth in Korea's economy has slowed again for another quarter. The Bank of Korea says the country's GDP expanded just 0.4% in the first 3 months of this year from the previous quarter. This marks a slowdown from the 0.7% growth posted a quarter before and is equal to the pace of expansion recorded when the country was hit hard by a MERS outbreak. Dragged down by faltering exports and dull domestic demand, the first quarter growth figure came in low despite aggressive government spending.
The government front-loaded its budget in the first quarter, which pulled up investments in social overhead capital. The government's spending and investments contributed greatly to first-quarter growth.
With that, construction investment went up almost 6%, while facilities investment plunged. Exports that have been on a downslide for over a year now dropped 1.7%, and private consumption also dipped. Citing weak first-quarter performance figures, Korea's central bank trimmed its latest forecast for growth to below 3%. This has further stoked worries of Korea falling into a low-growth trap, a reason why some analysts see more expansionary measures down the road.
The best scenario for the Korean economy this year would be growing at around the same level as last year, but most private institutions don't see that happening. That means the country needs a more aggressive fiscal policy compared to last year's extra budget.
But with the central bank for now saying that the economy will show signs of gradual recovery this quarter, economists say more monitoring should come ahead of a supplementary budget or a key rate cut. And facing skepticism that a rate cut will not be a cure-all for conditions that mostly stem from structural issues, experts say the Bank of Korea will remain cautious about moving the rate that already sits at a record low 1.5%. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
There have been conflicting reports about whether North Korea's submarine-launched ballistic missile last weekend was a success. While most found it easy to assume it was another failure, one expert says it could have gone exactly as Pyongyang had hoped. Kim Mo-gyun shares with us John Schilling's perspective.
An expert on the North's missile program said in an article carried by 38 North, a U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website, that Pyongyang's short-lived launch of a submarine-launched ballistic missile does not necessarily signal a failure. North Korea conducted the missile test on Saturday evening. It claimed the test was successful, but many experts label it a failure since it only flew about 30 kilometers before splashing into the East Sea. However, John Schilling's article said the missile could have been carrying fuel only for that distance, and he noted that it accelerated well past the speed of sound. The expert also said the test reveals that North Korea has shifted to developing a solid fuel missile after experiencing repeated failures with liquid fuel engines. According to him, images the North released of last year's SLBM test showed a yellow-orange streak of fire from the missile's tail, which is a key sign the missile runs on liquid fuel. But images of the latest test show, quote, an almost incandescent white plume, suggesting they are now using solid fuel. He said the solid fuel design is still in the earnest stages of testing, but it could make the development process easier, and he warned that North Korea's SLBMs could pose a real threat to the U.S. and its allies by 2020. The Pentagon's press secretary says the U.S. government is still assessing the latest test. He expressed regret about North Korea's latest provocation, saying that it merely serves to destabilize the Korean peninsula. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
North Korea is cracking down extra hard on people attempting to flee the country in search of a better life. Those caught taking the ultimate chance for freedom are often thrown into a life of squalor and backbreaking labor. Connie Kim reports.
North Koreans caught defecting are often sent to prison camps located in Gaechonsi or Hwaryongsi. The camps are notorious for their awful living and working conditions. Former prisoners report having had to live behind a 3-meter-high fence and say they were categorized according to their health and workload. North Koreans caught defecting twice have been sent straight to these prison camps. But this year's white paper on human rights in North Korea, published by the Seoul-based Korea Institute of National Unification, says the punishments for those attempting to flee have intensified. Those caught defecting even once are immediately sent to the camps. The harsh realities that prisoners face are documented in the testimonies of 180 defectors who were once imprisoned at the camps. One defector described an incident where a female prisoner was brutally beaten for dancing. Another defector said prisoners were beaten up if they didn't fulfill their daily quota for work. Making the situation worse, multiple layers of sanctions have recently been imposed on the regime, making it difficult to provide North Korean citizens with humanitarian aid. Experts recommend that government organizations and private institutions should aim to devise policies addressing the North Korea's human rights issues separate from the sanctions imposed on the North.
Currently, the Justice Ministry and private institutions are researching the human rights situation in North Korea, and the Unification Ministry recently said it will establish a North Korea Human Rights Records Center. Rather than having overlapping roles, each entity should have separate tasks to devise policies to improve North Korea human rights situation.
The general consensus among experts is that efforts to improve human rights in the North should be planned with long-term goals in mind in preparation for a reunified Korea. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is planning to hold bilateral talks with his Chinese, Russian, and Turkish counterparts this week in Beijing on the sidelines of the 5th Foreign Ministers meeting at the Conference on Interactions and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia. The ministry said Tuesday that issues related to North Korea will top discussions. Minister Yoon is expected to call for closer cooperation from the 26 members of the forum in hindering the regime from carrying out further provocations and address the importance of thorough implementation of UN Security Council sanctions. It's the first time South Korea is sending its top diplomat to the quadrennial event since it became a member in the year 2006. South Korea and the U.S. will solidify their mutual commitment to space exploration. They're expected to sign an agreement that could greatly advance both countries' ambitions, both in outer space and back here on Earth. Kim Jun has more on the two nations' second round of talks on the topic coming up tomorrow in Seoul.
Korea and the United States will ink a deal in Seoul on Wednesday to expand their cooperation on space exploration. The agreement is expected to help Korean scientists make greater contributions to space programs on an international scale by giving Korea an opportunity to invest in and work with U.S. space technology. Korea is upgrading its space program, planning to send an unmanned vehicle to the moon by 2020. So the deal will likely help the country advance those ambitions as well. The deal touches upon joint exploration of Mars, projects involving the International Space Station and satellite imagery, and co-development of space technology designed to address issues from climate change to natural disasters and food security. This is the first time the U.S. has signed a space cooperation deal with an Asian country and follows the first bilateral space cooperation meeting held in Washington in 2014 and President Park Geun-hye's visit to the country for a summit in October of 2015. Kim Jun, Arirang News.
250 miles above the Earth.
That's all we have for you at this hour. Thank you for watching.